Maqasidic Tafsir.
Where should I begin when I'm starting at the end? Pursuing the higher aim, learning the meaning of every page. Where should I begin when I'm starting at the end?
Assalamu alaikum. Sunnahfollowers presents a new class, the Maqasidic Tafsir, being taught and brought to you by Ustada Laila Nasheeba. Please stay tuned, streaming on all major platforms, right here on channel Sunnahfollowers.
Alhamdulillah, wassalat, wassalam ala wa rasulullah. I want to welcome everybody to our class. This is our class entitled the Maqasidic Tafsir. And this is another book that's put together by Sheikh Kareem Abu Zaid. And this is the picture of the book. For those of you who have not yet purchased it, you want to please get over to Amazon and get a copy of this book. It's $18.90, and I'm telling you, we're going to try to cover the whole. This is another series. He just put another book out. Excuse me, oh, so tired. Inshallah, we're going to try to cover this entire series. So again, for those of you who don't yet have the book, you want to get over to Amazon and purchase this book. And also for those of you who are new tuning in to me, you want to also get the book, Know Your Lord. That's for the Aqidah class that I'm teaching every day at 6:30. So most of the books that Sheikh Kareem Abu Zaid has put out, are being incorporated into our curriculum here at Sunnahfollowers. He has such great books. And what makes them so great is the fact that, number one, the information or the subject matter is authentic. He's teaching the basics of Islam with the correct understanding, which is the understanding of those companions. That's number one. Number two, they're written in English, and it's not that many English written books that detail our belief system as well and our deen as well as he has, because a lot of people are writing books now and they're putting their own opinions in it. Excuse me. They're not basing the information on the hadiths, or they don't have the knowledge of the hadiths, so they're using information that's not accurate. So I highly recommend that you buy these books from Amazon, written by Sheikh Kareem Abu Zaid. And for this class tonight, we're going to be covering just 2 pages. And by the way, if you guys can see from what I put out for you to read over, a lot of this book, like I told you guys, this book, this is the stuff that you learn if you were going to school in Al-Azhar University. This is the science of the Quran. And this type of information would not be taught unless you were, in school at Al-Azhar University, for example, and you were seeking a PhD in the science of the Quran. So a lot of this stuff, will go over your head. And so what I'm going to do to make it easier, because you guys are not trying to get off into the science of the Quran, what I want you all to be aware of is how the interpreters, how the most accurate interpreters detail to you the meaning of the Quran. Islam is based on only 2 sources, the Quran and the authentic hadiths. And we talked about how we're living in the days in which people are taking verses of the Quran and twisting them around, taking them out of context to justify making things lawful that Allah didn't make lawful, making things haram that he didn't make haram, and etc. So the whole purpose of me teaching this series is for you guys to see that Allah, first of all, Allah protected the Quran. He has protected the Quran and kept it from becoming distorted like the other books he sent down were. Okay, the Quran is protected, it's preserved. No one can change it. No one can refute it or any of that. Okay, but I just want you guys to see the science behind it. And so what I've done is I skipped over some things that are technical. Like, for example, I'm not going to ask you to memorize which surahs of the Quran are Mecki. I am not going to ask you to memorize which surah of the Qur'ans are Medini. Okay, and we're not going to get into that. I just want you to know why a surah is considered Mecki and why a surah is considered Medini. I want you guys to know what separates them, what distinguishes a Mecki surah from a Medini surah. That's all I want you to know, just the basics. Yeah, this is not a Quran class to teach you, the science and how to memorize and all of that. We're not into that here. I want you to understand the significance of the Mecki period of our history, the significance of the Medini period of our history. That's all. So we're going to do some skipping around. If you were in Al-Azhar University working on a PhD in the science of the Quran, then you'd have to know which surahs are what and how they're placed. But you don't have to learn that here with me. So let's put the PowerPoint up on the screen. And that is why today, and I did post it up yesterday, we're covering pages 92 through 95. We skipped over a couple of those pages. I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button. We skipped over a couple of pages that addresses, that which surahs are Mecki, which are Medini, how they rank and all. We skipped over that because I'm not expecting you guys to memorize any of that. Let's put let me show it to you better. This Zoom room thing gets in my way and I cannot see. Okay, so pages 92 through 95 are what we will be discussing today. We talked about the different sciences that are involved in that the interpreter has to know in order to give you the most accurate understanding of the meaning of the Quran, so you can apply it, so you can take it and become Maqasid with it. Okay, so we're going to speak about the science of connectivity. But before we do that, this is what I wanted you to walk away understanding about the Mecki and Medini surahs. Here's the first question. Question number 1. The Mecki surahs of the Quran focus on what aspect in the development of the Muslim? Who can answer that question? This is the big thing I want you to walk away understanding. The Mecki surahs of the Quran, they focus on what aspects in the development of the Muslim, or what parts of our development as a Muslim? Anyone? Come on. Come on, people. No one knows? Is there anyone in the Zoom room? Nobody's here? I have a dead audience today. I got a dead audience in my Zoom room. What about the people? I know you got lag on YouTube. Let me give y'all a couple of seconds. The Mecki surahs of the Quran focus on what aspects in the development of the Muslim, guys? Do you not understand the question? Let me know. Okay, my Zoom room is dead. Literally. Nobody has an answer on YouTube. If you guys can't answer these questions, and there's no need in me to go any further for today. Nobody on YouTube or Facebook knows either. All you people logged in.
Meccan source focus on the deen, on learning the deen.
What you mean by learning the deen? Learning the deen means learning the religion.
Your prayers, learning Tawheed.
Okay, is it learning prayer? Okay, learning. Okay. Good job. The Meccan surahs of the Quran focus on Aqidah or belief system. That's what I want you. Don't say the deen. The deen is everything. No, it's not everything. What part of our development? Our belief system. Everybody understand that? The Meccan surahs of the Quran were sent down to help build our iman, our belief in Allah. You have to be able to crawl before you can walk. You know, just because we convert to Islam doesn't make us a believer. We have to learn what it means to believe in Allah. So the Meccan surahs of the Quran focus on the Aqidah or the belief development of the Muslim. Okay, let's look at question number 2. If an interpreter is looking to understand the implications behind a law of Allah, most likely the surahs he would look at are which? The Meccan surahs or the Madani surahs? If a Quran interpreter is looking to get a good understanding of the implications behind one of Allah's laws, which surahs would he most likely look to? The Meccan or the Madani?
The Madani.
Okay, good job. And good job, Geechee too. Why the Madani? Why is it he would look at the Madani surahs? Who can tell me? This is all you need to walk away from last week understanding. Why would he look to the Madani surahs?
Because the Madani surahs was about the laws and what you can and can't do.
Exactly. The Madani surahs focus on the laws of Allah, the laws and obligations and things like that. So those are the 2 points I want you guys to remember. You don't have to memorize which surahs of the Quran are Meccan, which surahs are Madani, because if you have any Quran that you have, it's going to tell you. Every Quran tells you if a surah is Meccan or Madani. But I want you guys to know why, what that means. So now, understanding that, we can then crawl to the next part of the book, which is pages 49 through 52, I think I put. There's another science that's used to understand and interpret the Quran. We talked about how the interpreter or the person that's going to give you the explanation or the meaning behind the Quran, he has to have knowledge of the Arabic language, knowledge, the science of linguistics, the science of the language. He also has to know the history, of the biography of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. And another science that he has to know is the science of connectivity, which in Arabic is called al-munasaba. Al-munasaba, which is, this is a Quranic terminology that refers to the organization of each chapter of the Quran, how each chapter of the Quran is organized. Okay, the structure of the organization and all of that. This is known as the science of connectivity. And when we deal with this area of the Quran, we're dealing with the connection between the verses, how the verses connect with each other, how the verses work together to give the meaning to us. Everybody understand? Let me check this just to make sure ain't nothing wrong with nobody in my family. These my family people calling me, but I'm not answering. But So they just text. I want to make sure ain't nobody dead. Oh, okay. All right. People get popped. I don't want nobody popped. All right. Okay, so the science of connectivity is one of the primary disciplines of the Quranic science. It explains the meaning and the consistency between the verses and the chapters. For example, like Dr. Jamali, he was doing to you guys a tahrim, the connection. He gave y'all the connection, you know, of what this chapter was all about. It was about how two of the prophet's wives. It was about Hafsa and Aisha. How Hafsa and Aisha, radiallahu anha, you know, they did something that was really bad to do. They played a trick on the prophet, but it ended up exploding on them. Okay? The consistency between those verses and that chapter. So in order to be able to interpret the Quran to you or explain it to you, the scholar has to know this science. Okay, the science of connectivity investigates the textual perspectives of the verses, which affirms the Tawqifi concept of the order of the Quran. This is very important. Does everybody understand that? And I tried to keep this in plain, simple English. I know the Arabic turns a lot of you off. The Arabic makes it confusing. So I'm trying to just give it in English to you. Just remember when you hear the term munasaba, linguistically, it refers to relationships, connections, and links. But when we use it when talking about the Quran and science, we're talking about how Allah determined the final position of the verses and the chapter of the Quran. All right? So that's it. And when we deal with the connectivity, the science of the science of connectivity, the following components are looked at. Number one, the mufassir or the interpreter looks at the relationship between two neighboring chapters in the present order of the Quran. So they're going to look at one chapter, the chapter that came before it, and the chapter that came after it. Okay? And what's the relationship between them? The connection between the beginning of the chapter, the connection between the end of the chapter. Okay? They're going to look at the relationship between the ending and the beginning verses of a chapter or a previous one, and the wisdom behind the sequence of the verses, the wisdom behind how the verses are placed in that chapter. These are all the different things that the scholar or the interpreter will look at. He'll also look at the link between the first, second, and the second and third verses, the way Dr. Jamali did. He would start with one verse and he'd say, look at this verse. And he would tell you how this verse connects to the honey. When he did the story, the Tahrim of Surah Tahrim, the honey, he gave you the connection between the last verse, how Allah said this, and it was in regards to the previous verse. Well, they thought that the prophet wouldn't know. Okay, so the interpreter looks at the link between the first, the second, and the third verses, and the relationship also of the chapter's name, the chapter's theme, and the higher aim. What was the higher meaning, the higher aim of at-tahrim? Don't swear oaths. Don't swear to something that Allah made good and clean for you, okay? Don't cause discord. Don't allow your jealousy to cause discord between you and your husband. Okay, so we have to look at the name of the surah, the central thing behind it, so we can reach the most probable understanding of the chapter. So as you guys can see, you can't just pick up a Quran and start reading it and think, oh, this means this, and oh, and twist it around. No, this is how Allah preserved it. Also, there's a general connection between all the verses in a chapter. You have to know how all those verses in that chapter connect to each other. How do they connect? Okay. You also have to know the unity between the end of a chapter and the beginning of another in terms of the theme, the content. How was it that Dr. Jamali started off with Surah Nisa? Then he went to Baqarah. Then he went to At-Tahrim. Okay? This is how you look at the unity between the end of a chapter and the beginning of another in terms of content and theme. Dr. Jamali was able to take Nisa and those few verses from Baqarah and then At-Tahrim and give y'all the meaning. Dr. Jamali has a PhD in the science of the Quran. He also has a PhD in the science of Hadith. This is his specialty. Okay? Also, the interpreter. Walaikum salam, brother. Also, the interpreter. He looks at the surah, which contributes to the higher meaning within that surah. He looks at the verses within that surah that help contribute to the higher meaning or the main point that Allah is trying to get across to you. So you can in turn take that main point and apply it in your life. So as you can see, guys, it's a science. There's a science behind understanding the Quran. That's why not everybody can teach tafsir. Not everybody can teach a Quran tafsir class. You have to know the history. You have to know the linguistics. You have to know the period of revelation. You have to know the placement. You have to know the general connection between the verses and what other verses in another chapter, like Jamali was able to do, to hop from Nisa to Baqarah to At-Tahrim to get that full Maqasidic, the Maqasid meaning. It's a science. Now, let's hit on this part here. There are some scholars that dismiss the need to have an approach like this with the Quran. Okay? And for those scholars who do challenge this theory, they argue that the science of connectivity allows for the verses to become distorted or misinterpreted. However, this view is weak. What makes it weak is, although the theories of connectivity have been used by many people in academia, they don't just depend on the science of connectivity. They also use the other sciences of the Quran too to come up with a better meaning. Like when Dr. Jamali is doing his class on spousal rights. When he flips around from Nisa to Baqarah to At-Tahrim and Tawbah, other chapters, okay? He's not only using connectivity, the science of connectivity, but he's also using the science of linguistics too. He's also using the other sciences as well. And again, this is what any well-grounded scholar would do. They wouldn't just rely on one aspect of science, of the science of the Quran. They would use the other aspects of the science of the Quran as well. Does everybody understand that? And again, whatever theories that a person comes up with, whatever theories or point that an interpreter comes up with, it cannot contradict. Remember, we talked about this. It cannot contradict other evidence from the Quran. So whatever theory you develop, it cannot contradict others. Let me give an example. Right now, we have some brothers who call themselves scholars. They want to divide the laws of Sharia up. They want to divide the laws of Sharia, Allah's laws in the Quran, into two groups. Essential laws that we have to abide by, and non-essential laws that we don't have to abide by. An example that they've come up with of a non-essential law is we can support LGBTQ. This totally contradicts what Allah says in numerous verses of the Quran about us not taking part in that which Allah has made haram. We can't even sit in the company of people who commit sin. More or less protest with them, more or less boycott with them, more or less form friendships with them. So that's an example. How can you come up with a theory, based on your interpretation, but your theory that you've come up with totally contradicts, other evidences from the Quran? And I like the way Sheikh Kareem put here the reminder from one of the scholars, Sheikh El-Fawzan. Sheikh El-Fawzan, he says, there are no contradictions in the Quran. If a contradiction is identified, it is a contradiction from yourself, from your intellect, your understanding, not from Allah. So we can't sit there and say that LGBTQ is haram on one hand, but it's okay for us to support them and go out and protest with them. Oh, no. Allah doesn't make contradictory comments like that or remarks like that or laws like that. That's from yourself. Okay? Because Allah's word is perfect. Our intelligence is imperfect. Okay? Then there's a third position on this that falls between these two extremes, and this is the balanced position. The balanced position is that there are themes of individual chapters that are evident and make themselves clear to the expert interpreter. In other words, there's a lot of verses and a lot of themes of the different chapters that are clear. These themes lead to discovering relevance between other chapters in the Quran. And likewise, some of the Quranic verses have clear meanings, and a connection between them is feasible. So they say if the themes of the chapters and the verses are evident, then there is no harm in expressing and sharing relationships between them. This approach will prove the fulfillment, completeness, perfection, and harmony of the Quran. So, when it comes to interpreting the Quran, the interpreter must consider indicators that signify the place of the revelation, such as whether it was Mecca, Medina, or whatever. And he has to look to describe the stepping stones of those chapters that will bring us and guide us towards spiritual strength, and we can in turn apply it in our personal lives. So this is all you need to know from those pages. And I know it's a lot, but I tried to make it simple for you guys in layman terms